Hello and welcome back to my garden. Today I'm going to attempt or continue to attempt to train and prune up my climbing rose, which is, it's coming along. It's probably about as tall as I am, if not a little taller. We'll see it when we get over there in a second, but I'm not proficient at pruning a climbing rose. I'm getting better with the shrub roses, but the climbing rose not so much. So if you guys see me doing things wrong, well, feel free to comment below. And if you have any good sources on trimming or pruning climbing roses, or if you guys have your own climbing roses and you trim and prune, please leave those comments below. Let me know what it is I'm doing wrong or how I should be doing certain things. In the meantime, let me grab a few more supplies and let's go over to the climbing rose. So this here is my Generous Gardener climbing rose. Now, for those of you who've been following the channel for a while, I built this crazy rebar tower structure here in the front corner of my rose garden because I thought that was the best place for a climbing rose. I wanted a climbing rose, but I had nothing else to grow it on per se. So I built this rebar tower, and as you can see, the rose is getting up there, but it needs some deadheading, and I think some of the branches are doing some crisscrossing. And I see a couple of broken branches, and the deer have been here and they have nibbled on this poor little guy here. So what I'm going to attempt to do today is try to clean this up and do some tying off. And I think it's in shot, but there's a branch which is really long and it's going all the way over that way, and I want to bring it back up. The end goal to this is to have the climbing rose go to the top of this, which is about, I want to say 8 feet, 9 feet up. And the Generous Gardener is supposed to go to about 15 feet tall, roughly. So what I'm thinking is once it gets to that top of the 8, 9 feet, it'll cascade over. So it'll sort of be hanging down. And I think that'll look nice. Maybe, possibly, not sure. The nice thing about roses, I think, in my opinion, as I've been gardening, learning as I've been gardening, is they're kind of like a weed, at least for me. I don't know about you guys, but they're not some tender, gentle, treat me with kid gloves kind of thing. They're pretty durable. I could literally cut this right down to 6 inches of the ground today, and it would regrow to this height probably by this time next year. There are a bunch of other roses that I have here in the rose garden, which we're going to do another video on later, sometime this year, probably in the next few weeks, where I am going to do heavy winter pruning on them. And that's because a lot of the branches are crisscrossing, and there's a whole bunch of other reasons. We'll get into it when we do those roses. But today I wanted to sort of just give this poor rose some TLC, training this guy up with a few different methods. So one of them, which I think you guys will be able to see here, is I've been using a wire. So now this is a garden wire. I've been using that, and I've also been using twine, and I use the twine basically for as I'm trying to get the canes, I think that's what they're called, canes, the straight up and down pieces there. Again, if I'm wrong on any of this, or you're cringing as you're watching this, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm kind of winging it because I haven't been able to find a good climbing rose video where they deal with sort of this kind of situation. And I've seen climbing rose videos where they have walls and they train them on walls and they look absolutely beautiful, but I don't know if you've noticed, I don't have any walls here. So this is what I've got, and this is what we're going to try to work with. But as I said, I've been trying to use the twine to help direct the cane to a certain particular point, and then try to use the wire as that sort of more of a structural support so the cane can lean against it. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Let's start with the deadheading first. Now, this rose did do quite a bit of blooming recently, and that is because I had fertilized it back in September. I don't know if I like this branch. We'll get to structural in a bit. Let's just get the deadheading first. And as I'm deadheading, what I'm doing is just taking it sort of back to the next set of leaves. Now, I read someplace, and again, correct me if I'm wrong or throw in your own 2 cents, that you should deadhead to a group of 5 leaves. But maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've found where it really makes a difference whether you go back to a single group, like the first set of leaves, which may only have 2 or 3 leaves on a stem, or if you go back to a grouping of 5. In some instances, as I'm pruning this, there may not be any leaves at all, but I can see some buds on the stem, so I'll trim back to the next bud. So that's good, that's good. A few more up here. I'm actually going to trim this all the way back to the stem. Okay, now I think I got all the stems deadheaded, and I'm not sure if it's in frame here, but we've got this lovely, like I said, branch with it's got a cluster of flowers that are ready to start opening. And as with most roses, the Generous Gardener does smell lovely. What I'm now going to attempt to do, and I don't know again how well this is going to show up on video, is just start to go through this and see if I can get it to shape or get it to... It's difficult for me to explain because I don't know what I'm talking about, but try to get it to, as opposed to flopping outside of the tower, sort of move up along the tower. So like there's this branch here. Now this branch looks a little rough, but there are good buds on it. And I think what I'm going to do is simply tie it off here. I'm probably going to get pricked at some point. This is the one thing I don't like about roses. I don't know if anybody likes this about roses, but it is a small price to pay for a wonderful flower. Gently, we're going to loop this around. Okay. Now I'm just using natural twine here, so this will, and I'm not tying it super tight, and this twine will rot away and fall away at some point. So I'm not too worried about that. There's this one right here, which looks really good. I think what I'm going to do with this one is there is an outer branch right here. I'm just going to, there we go. That goes away. And the other three branches are on the inside of the wire, so they can continue to creep up the wire. This branch right here is moving up nicely, but it's starting to move out that way. I think I want to pull it more this way, so I'm going to take a piece of twine and see what we can do about getting it back on track. There we go. So now that branch will continue to move upwards where I want it. And all along here, all along these stems of, I guess the canes is what you call the longer straighter pieces, there are lots of buds. So hopefully next year those buds all come out to be nice, beautiful stems with beautiful roses on them, and hopefully I can keep the deer off of them. So this is lovely new growth here. I think I just want to train it more inwards. So instead of coming out, it'll now go up, hopefully. There's a channel called Fraser Valley Farm. I'll leave a link below here if I remember. But his whole shtick is roses. I really need to go and pay more attention to some of his videos. I don't know if he's done a climbing rose video. I know he does a lot of shrub roses, but either way, I should go back, peruse his catalog of videos, and see if he's got one, because he tends to explain things pretty nicely and clearly, at least in my opinion. His name is also Jason. And here's a branch sticking out completely, and I don't know, I don't like it where it is. So I'm gonna take it right back to a bud, or what I think is a bud. I'm not trying to do, at least intentionally, is make it hug the rebar. If it stands off a few inches, that's fine. I don't need it to, it's just that generalized structure. So there's a branch right here, and I kind of like where it is, but I want it to pull it a little more inwards. So I'm just gonna take a big old piece of string here. Perfect, that's what I want. All right, here we go, that's good. And I like that, right there. This is my first and only climbing rose. But I'm thinking that over time, the branches will stiffen up on their own, because this is relatively fresh and new growth. And then once they do, they'll kind of hold the shape. Does that make any sense? Am I making sense here? This branch is gonna go. And I've watched a bunch of videos where people will prune these against the wall, and it seems so much easier because you're dealing with almost a two-dimensional space versus a three-dimensional space, if that makes any sense. hopefully you guys can see this branch sort of, again, coming out. And I got to decide, do I want to pull it up? Do I want to remove it? Because I have other canes coming up. Decisions. Okay, so there's a big branch gone. And down here at the base, I have a pink mink clematis. It's a proven winner's variety. And it's already starting to climb up, and it's difficult to show, but it's about roughly 2 feet tall now. I did plant it late in the season, and we've had a crazy year, but I'm hoping upon hope that next year we get some more rain and things are a little nicer, and that this pink mink clematis just goes crazy right up through the rose itself, uses the rose as support, climbs up through it, and when the rose isn't blooming, hopefully, maybe, possibly, the pink mink will be flowering. Or they flower at the same time, I don't know. But either way, I think it'll be a nice show. In the meantime, I think that's got to be tied over here, and this has got to be tied over here. So let me do that now. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I still have that big branch to deal with, so let's see if we can do something about that now. Hopefully, you guys can see all this. And what I have here is a huge branch. Now, real interesting, like, it obviously has thorns, but very few towards the top new growth, which is very, very interesting. And I think what I'm going to try to do is get this branch to sort of move up this way. I just got to be careful. We're going to loop that around like so. I didn't pull it right up tight against the rebar because it is coming off of a joint down here, but it is still very fresh and new. So it's going up, over, it's cruising along. So I think that's all the pruning I'm going to do to this climbing rose today. I did trim a bunch of stems from the bottom, and it's very difficult to show you that, so I won't. Hard to get a camera angle in there, I tried. But I trimmed some branches from the center, so hopefully it gives it room to breathe. From my understanding here in growing zone 8B, Eastern North Carolina, or really anywhere in the South, a rose bush being able to breathe is huge, so it doesn't contract a lot of fungal diseases. I think this is going to be it for today. This is all I'm doing today, is just trying to get this climbing rose sort of under control, back into the constraints roughly of this tower that I've built. I did not use any of the garden wire today because it just didn't necessitate it, but I probably will as this gets higher. I'll probably, you know, run a few more strands as it climbs up to the top, and we'll see what happens. I think it looks okay. There's a lot of new growth on it, so cross our fingers and toes. Next year is going to be a much, much better year for this climbing rose, and it has a spectacular show of flowers for me to show you guys. So that's going to be about it for today. If you guys have any questions, comments, etc., you know where to leave them. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, click on the bell icon to be notified when I do post a new video, because hopefully it'll be much more interesting than this video today. That's going to wrap it up for today. I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.